You're listening to Mollie on a Trip, music around Paris on Paris Underground Radio.
Salut! You have reached Mollie on a Trip, music around Paris. My name is Mollie, and I'm a former music executive, and I moved to Paris in 2022 for an adult gap year, kind of a post-COVID YOLO vibe. In the podcast, I'll be talking to musicians, songwriters, producers, and executives, both traveling and natives, about what they like to do here. I was interested in where they like to play shows, where they hang out, what kind of art they like to check out, where their favorite neighborhoods are, and my personal favorite is finding out where they like to eat and drink. Hope you enjoy. So today I got a chance to speak to Lizzie LPX. She is also in Ms. Mister and a founder of Neon Gold Records, which is super cool. I heard about them all the time when I was younger and, was intimidated and excited to meet them at CMJ back in the day in New York City. And she's now still living in New York, but has toured through Paris before. Christine and the Queens actually opened for her, which is amazing. And we ended up having a really great chat about a lot about vintage clothes. So please enjoy LPX. Hello, LPX.
Hi.
Hello from Paris. What's up? I miss you.
Hello from New York.
How is New York? What is the spring? Tell me.
She is shining, like she had been hibernating. She had felt gross. And now she's like coming out the cave, like loud and bright and beautiful. And it's like truly exceptional. Like the best that New York has to offer is like right now.
I know that energy. It is wild. It is wonderful. It's so good.
But I feel like a New York spring isn't so different from like a general Paris existence. Where it's like, it's crisp, it's bright, it's probably going to rain a couple times during the day, but the sun will still come back out again.
I was having a moment that felt very reminiscent of going to New York, where I was walking down the street and was like, oh, I'm going to get a €5 umbrella, which is like, everyone who's ever been to New York has been like, yep, I immediately need an umbrella. I'm glad that they sell them everywhere and it will break in 2 weeks. It's like the same thing. Like,
correct.
I got one here.
Absolutely correct. I feel like with all the technological inventions, how have we not figured out how to do like an umbrella the size of a credit card that you expand and it goes into a full umbrella? Okay,
so other side of that, also wondering, why don't we have human hamster balls?
You know what? Great question, Mollie. And people are not asking the hard-hitting questions enough.
Because think about this. If we had human hamster balls, what is like your other problem when there's an umbrella? Getting hit in the head with someone else's umbrella. But if you were in your human hamster ball, you're just rolling. You're great. You're doing fine. No one is messing with you. This is wonderful. It's like Wayne Coyne did it. Like, why can't we all do that down Fifth Avenue? Like, I think it's a good idea.
I think like a city of essentially like bubble boys and girls would be really fun.
Yeah, I'm actually crying from laughing. This is, we're doing great here. Welcome to Mollie and LPX chat.
I miss you. How are you doing?
It is awesome here. I really am loving it.
I have no doubt in my mind. You guys are going to stay indefinitely, yeah?
Yeah, that's kind of the plan. It was an interesting, when you tell your friends and family, I'm going to go on vacation for 2 weeks, or for you, I'm going to go on tour for 3 months. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's so long, like 3 whole months. And then when I decided to bounce for 1 year, I was like, my brain has melted. I am clearly a marble head person. Like, I'm broken. I don't know what's going on. But I really wanted to do it. And then when we had been here for like 9 months, it was like, how on earth could this possibly be long enough? This Paris is so interesting and vibrant and fun. And obviously we'll get into all that. But also, like, we took the train to Lyon last week, going to Nice and Marseille next week. I'm going to Berlin. I'm going up to London twice. Like, this ability to do things so close in Europe, it's just so exciting. And I can't imagine not, getting to taste that more, literally.
Europe is such an epic treat in that way. And I know that like I'm born and raised in England. So like my entire life until I was 18 was like literally going to Paris to play like soccer games at the other like international schools, or like going to The Hague or going to wherever. And it's just like, yeah, to be able to hop a train and go somewhere else in Europe is so magical and special. I'm so inspired that you went and did this. It's such a great reminder that, you know, like no choice in life is permanent, and your life can continue to look whatever version of it you want it to look like. And I believe that so deeply.
Amen.
Like, what are we here for if not to like be curious and to adventure and to find new places that feel like home, find new people that feel like home. I think it's really cool that you went and did this. I feel bolstered and inspired.
Thank you. I think that has been one of the interesting lessons. It was technically Sam's idea. And at first I was like, but you can't actually do that. Like, what? And then you can. Like, you can do it.
You can do anything you want.
And the thing is the reasons to not, if you start listing them, I can tell you that there are people here that came here with no money. I can tell you that there are people that came here with young baby children. I can tell you people moved here with dogs, and a friend that's moving with a cat, which is like a whole other thing. But anyway, it just, all the reasons that we tell ourselves that we can't do things are often not true. And obviously I'm not saying that, like, you know, everyone has every opportunity on earth, but it was a really fabulous reminder that a lot of our time is choice.
And that we build our own realities. And then what happens? Can I ask, did you already have friends in France? Do you feel like you re-tapped into a community of music industry people? Do you feel like you found a new like community? Because I think there's an interesting thing that happens, or at least in my experience, where like maybe as an entry point you hang out with a lot of expats, and then I'm wondering if that has sort of bled into people who are outside of that community, or what that friend group looks like for you now.
So actually, it kind of went backwards to that in the sense that I started with some music industry friends because they're really the only people I'd met here. And then we met some people through one of Sam's best friends. And now we have this very robust group of friends. And I would say, partially, unfortunately, a lot of them are expats. So I can exist like pretty easily without sitting down and having to speak French for hours. And I really need to work on that.
Can you do that?
No, I mean, I can Franglish. Like, we'll go to dinner with some people that are much more French speaking, and I'm more English, but I can understand a lot. And it's actually, Lizzie, it is gorgeous. It is so fun to like the spin of how the conversation will move between the languages, and even in one sentence, in one person's mouth, it'll change. And I also have been like recently almost feeling like I'm in Harry Potter, because I will go in somewhere and I will use these magic words that I didn't know before, and then a chicken will arrive in my hand, and I'm just like it really, I think I just get this like grin on my face because I'm so excited that these magical words produced a chicken for me.
It is so special.
It's wild.
I mean, language in general is so fascinating, and I have always felt that if I had like 3 genie in a bottle wishes, one of them would absolutely be to just automatically know and be able to speak every language in the world, because it's so magical to be able to connect with anyone else in another language, and it feels like you're sharing codes.
Yeah.
And I think you know this, but I've been painting and working on so much visual work, but like so much of like something that I think about is language beyond language, like ways in which we communicate beyond that.
Yeah, and writing lyrics, you probably have thought about language. You've had a different study of language that isn't study like in school. It's like, how can I express meaning in this particular way that also is going to fit with the intention of the musical vibe, which is always so interesting to me. You know, another thing, I don't know if you've studied French at all, but some of their phrasing is stunning. Yes. And someone will be like, oh, that means a crush. Like, I have a crush on that person. I have a crush on that thing. And then you find out it actually means having a heart stroke. And you're like, oh my God, I love you. Like, it's so dramatic.
All of those isms are so magical. And they exist in every culture, right? Like, you know, like especially like the Japanese in particular has like so many words that like describe things that we don't have words for in English. Or, you know, like we have weird phrases like pinching pennies or stuff like that, or whatever it
right.
is. But those isms to each culture are like, is so special. But it doesn't surprise me that France's are particularly dramatic and romantic.
So both of those words. That is the perfect way to put it. I'm going to start texting you like as these come up in my life and be like, here's another one, because they fascinate me.
I super welcome it.
So in terms of France, so you grew up in England. What are your first memories of either coming here or like perceptions of France or Paris? Like how did it become into your psyche?
Well, I'm a little embarrassed to say that my first experience of France was a trip that my mom and her mother took me to, I think when I was like 4 or 5.
Adorable.
And I think it was like a theoretical birthday trip for all 3 of us. Not that like any of our birthdays are in the same month or anything, but it was like a trip about these 3 generations like coming together and having a bit of a girls' weekend.
Cute.
And I remember like we stayed at the Ritz and we went to the Louvre and we walked all over the city and we just got like really dressed up to like be in Paris. And I thought it was so magical off the bat. Just felt like I had stepped into a film. And I just thought everyone was so chic and so glamorous, and the city sort of like drips with that both grimy and highbrow elegance. Like it really just covers everything. And I really did fall in love with it. So it's always sort of held a little bit of an escapist fantasy for me. But that was a pretty like, tender introduction.
And then as you got older, like when did you start coming here on your own? And have you ever toured? Have you played Paris before?
I have played Paris so many times. I mean, I had that first trip. I think I probably there were a couple parties. I went to like Disneyland in Paris. In high school, like I said, like I went to an international school. So we play a lot of international schools sort of all over Europe and Spain, Germany, France, whatever. And sometimes on those trips, we'd be able to like sneak out at night and go out with the other schools and like go party and hang at bars because we were all drinking early anyway.
Was that fun?
It was amazing. I mean, growing up in London, it wasn't so different. Like we had a lot of independence early. We were already drinking. We were already like sort of traversing the city on our own. But it just felt magical, and it felt really like adult really early to be able to be like unleashed onto the scene.
Wait, one question. Were the French kids cool? Like, were you like, these kids are dope? Was it?
They were cool. They were very, very cool. And I remember like a lot of the girls smoked like Vogue cigarettes. In England, we had a lot, like it was rolly culture. But in France, these girls smoked these really skinny cigarettes. It was like Vogues and cloves. Like I just remember like those 2 cigarettes being around, and I thought that was cool. I'm not here to condone smoking, but that really did feel like sexy.
Yeah, it was an era too.
Yeah, it was an era. There was so much like good music happening. Then when Derek and I started Neon Gold when I was in college, we went to Paris a couple times.
Oh.
And we even did Pop Shop at Nobu Casino.
No way.
And then I played it a bunch with Miss Mister. I mean, like, the first show we ever played in Paris was at, I'm going to butcher this because I don't speak French or have an accent at all. But we played Mahal Kinneret. And it is, to this day, one of my favorite shows I've ever played in my life. That show was, like, an all-time top 5 for Max and me.
Sick.
And then we also played Nobu Casino. Christina the Queen's opened for us, like, before she had, like, hit it big.
No way.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
I know. We played Rock on Seine. We played this venue, like, 10 minutes away from the Bataclan the night that the shooting happened.
No way.
That I think was the last time I was in Paris. We were in a venue literally around the corner.
Wow. That's so scary.
Oh, you know what? I've been back once since then for a birthday trip with my best friend. But so I really feel like I've lived every corner and edge of Paris from both like a professional and a personal standpoint.
If you're enjoying this episode of Music Around Paris, you may also be interested in our sister podcast, Don't Miss This, which is about interesting happenings going on in Paris every week. Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris. So, in terms of that show that you said was like the most magical show, and I totally know what you mean, but I'm also curious, what was it about that show that stands out to you in your memory as like so special?
Well, I think it was maybe the first international play that we had done as Miss Mister. We had gotten off the plane that day. I was super sick, like running a really high fever, was jet lagged. It was our first, I think it was our first European show. You know, we had no understanding of what this was going to be like. And the venue itself is really special. It's like almost like a tiny, tiny club amphitheater because it's sort of like in a half circle. So it's really intimate. So the space itself was magical, but the fans were so lit up. They knew every word to every song.
Cool.
It was really like my first experience of what that relationship feels like with an audience.
Wow.
I really feel like I transcended my body because I was also like hallucinating. I was so sick.
Yeah.
And Max and I were on the verge of tears like the whole time. I mean, it was really just like the dream pie in the sky type of show that you can't even believe is even real. And what was even more magical about it was that one of my lifelong best friends was at that show and he didn't tell me. And he surprised me after the show and he'd seen the whole thing. And so then to have this like personal, emotional connection and validation from someone who knows me to be like, this is so real. Like this, you're on a rocket ship and this is like its own thing. It was so special. Like Paris holds a permanent place of love in my heart because of that show.
And I mean, sorry, it's dark, but on the other end, I was in London the night of the Bataclan shooting, and I think that, like, I don't know, I guess, obviously we have so many horrifying shootings that are happening in the States over and over again right now, and it's awful. And this was the first time that a shooting had gone into a music space that I was sort of close to people, and I was so shook by, like, music is the thing that brings people together. Music is the language of all languages. It's history. It is like in our bodies. I mean, and we've been creating music since before we could communicate. I mean, do you know what I mean? I don't know why I was just like, oh, that's just a safe place. Because obviously there is no safe place, but shook me.
But it is like, you know, I felt the same. I mean, Max and I were deeply shook.
Oh God, I'm sure.
I mean, it could have been us. Like, not to be dramatic about it, but like, truly, we were around the corner. It was another American band. Our promoter had been at our show and left our show early to go to the Bataclan and got shot and survived. But like, you know, and then the show shut down and we were sort of trapped in the venue while everyone was figuring out how to get home. And Max and I were in the middle of this European tour and our band was really freaked. Everyone was like, we want to go home. We don't want to keep doing the tour. And I won't lie, there was a period there. I felt that way too. You know, this, like, the venues, there's such a sacred space, and art is such a sacred way of communicating, and it's like, of all the places to attack, I felt really scared. And Max and I had, you know, we stayed up all night sort of like crying and talking and figuring out what to do, and it became honestly sort of a paramount point in my life where we just sort of dug in and we're like, we can't let people scare us out of art as a form of resistance, and this is so pure and we have to keep going. And art is a form of protest, and it has always served that function. But, you know, to not be scared out of the things that we love and to sort of stay rooted in this community. The rest of that tour was really challenging. You know, we played Amsterdam the next night, and the footage from that show, I mean, I'm really on edge the whole time. I mean, I was a mess.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was scary. But it's also, you know, just a reminder that art is important, that music is important, community is important.
Big time. And I agree. And I fully support you going out and creating community again, even the next day, and creating community with your fans. At the end of the day, like, metal detector and like security measures are like obviously continuing to have to be intense, but also that like we are not going to stop going to live shows. We're not going to stop creating live shows, and that we're not going to stop creating music. By the way, we signed record contracts for the universe. So this could be extra stellar connectivity at some point.
100%. Yeah. The Lady Gaga concert from the moon is imminent.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I know you have like such incredible aesthetics with what you wear, your makeup, the art that you do. And like, for anyone listening, her house is amazing. There's an article in Dwell. She's just got this incredible eye. And I know you like F with the vintage. You know, the vintage is crazy in Paris. Have you done it? Are you into it? Like, what's up?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you. I highly appreciate that. Yes. I mean, like, I'm such an aesthetic junkie. I'm such like a aggressive colorist, and the vintage stuff has always been like in my bones. Like I've been going to Portobello every weekend since I was a child. And on tour, shopping for vintage has always been like sort of my number one thing to do in downtime. And it's such an amazing place to get to know a city because you get to know the people who are running the stores. They give you suggestions of where to go. Then you end up buying a piece and then you look at your closet later and you're like, oh my God, I have this like global like charm bracelet of like all of my travels from all over the world. I mean, it's so special. And I don't want to be so materialistic about it, but I adore my closet because it really is this love letter to everywhere I've ever been. I think vintage is so magic, and it's such an amazing way to show your personality and style as like an individual versus like fashion for fashion's sake. It's so much more about like individual perspective.
Yeah.
So in Paris, like obviously Paris is like next level vintage, both like designer level and whatever, like the most lowbrow secondhand or street market. And when we first started going, I don't know if it's changed in time, but when we first started going, Kilowatch was like our big go-to. They had a couple big stores and we'd go and we'd buy up. And I think I would end up like wearing things that I bought that day, that night. As I've gotten older, my taste and buy level has expanded both above and beyond. But one of my all-time favorite vintage stores is in Paris, and it's called Thanks God I'm a VIP. Have you been there?
Oh, yeah, it is.
It is. I mean, I just really think that in terms of like curation, the kind of pieces they have, the quality at which they are maintained, both designer and non-designer pieces, it's one of my favorite spaces.
Do you know the tale about that store? Do you know the story?
No, tell me.
I feel like you'll appreciate this. By the way, I've never researched this. I do not know if it's true, but I think it's a great story. Supposedly, the woman who founded it was like an OG Ibiza person, like before it was cool. You know what I mean? Like back in the day, like.
Yeah.
And she threw this party in Ibiza, and she started throwing this party that kind of like made Ibiza. It was exclusive, but it was so cool and whatever. And it was called Thanks God I'm a VIP. And this is her shop now.
Right.
I know. I should find out if this is true, but it's like, what a great story.
That's cool. You know what? I really love hearing other stories of musicians and artists and their relationship to vintage and how they've sort of like expanded their world into that. Because it's something that, I've always been buying for myself. And in the past couple of years, I've started buying and selling, and I sell through a store in New York called Club Vintage at South Street Seaport. And I sometimes curate and sell to other buyers and sellers. And I sometimes do like some styling for a friend and stuff like that. It's just always been a very fun, easy thing that I'm good at and love doing. And it's cool. I think there is this history of this connection between musicians and vintage because it's always been an accessible and interesting way with which you can sort of like communicate your vision. There's another girl out of Nashville who I think is a big Nashville artist who opened a store there. Maybe that would be in my future. I would love to know that about Thanks God I'm a VIP.
Right? If there's going to be like the LPX that's like your brick and mortar or whatever.
Some festivals have approached me maybe about like curating and doing some vintage merch items for them and stuff like that. And I think there's an environmentally conscious side to vintage as well, right? Where it's like, being averse to fast fashion and how can we just like sort of shop intelligently and thoughtfully and intentionally. And I like that side to it too.
You know what else? I think there's something really, I guess romantic's not the right word, but like there's something really gorgeous for me about sharing clothes with these other humans that I don't know. And I love that they wore them before, and I love that I'm wearing them now, and I love that they are made with such quality that I still have it and it's still existing. And I've got this really amazing 1980 Celine t-shirt that's in I know it's great. And I got it from this, there's another vintage place you should check out. It's Rive Gauche. Next time you come, it's called Good Joe, and it's this woman and her kid's name is Joe. And she basically has all these relationships places, and every week just gets sick pieces in. And she's the type of person where it's smaller than Thanks God, but it's still robust. You'll reach up and you'll touch something and she'll be like, that's from the 1989 runway. Like she knows, she loves them. They're her children. It is so cute.
Well, they're part of the fabric, literally and figuratively, of history. And it's almost like when someone else, buys a piece, it's like you're passing notes through time. That's so magical that you're so connected to these stories, the people who made them, the people who wore them. I just think vintage is so special. It has always just been a real consistent love language of mine ever since I was a kid.
Well, we got to get you back to Paris.
I know the taste and quality is it's really exceptional. And even if you go to like, you know, huge street markets, I mean, the deals that are to be had are fantastic. And like, I can't deny, like, I love a good deal. Especially now that I'm selling, you know, to be able to flip something feels like really good. And maybe that's like my New York hustle side, like coming out. But I've always been good at doing that.
Yeah, there's a rush there. It's great.
Unfortunately, then I just go back and put it back into shopping, which is a mistake.
Of course. But that's the love.
Yeah, it's its own ecosystem.
Okay, well, I appreciate you so much. I have a last question that I have been asking all my guests. Mm-hmm. And the listenership is some in France and some in the States, actually, also, which is cool, of the Paris Underground Radio Network. So I like to ask a musician, a touring musician, and a lover of Paris, do you have any advice for someone visiting Paris? I mean, it sounds like it might be go to Thank God I'm a VIP, but what would be your, like, nuggets for someone coming to Paris?
My nuggets for Paris, and I don't know if this is it's maybe the advice I would give to anyone traveling anywhere, but I think it really feels particularly true for Paris. Go get lost. Truly, I don't think with Paris you need to have a plan. Really, really, really. I think you can walk around and have the best croissant of your life, stumble into an art gallery, discover a restaurant that no one has ever been to but is one of the best meals you've ever had, meet a stranger at a bar, try a new bottle of wine. I just think it is a city filled of treasures, and whether you're getting tips from someone or not, you will always find your own version of like what like the crown jewel of that experience is. It is flush with unique, beautiful people and places that I guarantee you that your friends have not discovered yet. I really think, yeah, Paris is a place to get lost and like sort of follow the adventure.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And yeah, this is great. I'll see you soon. Bisous. Thanks for being here today. Hope you enjoyed the chat on Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris. Please check out the other great podcasts on the Paris Underground Radio Network. If you have a second, also, please rate us on Apple Podcasts. It does actually help. And if you want to find me, I'm at Mollie on a Trip on Instagram, and I'd love to chat about music and food and wine and everything Paris. And I'm also super happy to hear suggestions for future guests. Thanks.
Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris was produced by Jennifer Garrity for the Paris Underground Radio Podcast Network.